ET.
Huh? It's 5:05 and welcome into a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We are continuing to track details out of Western North Carolina now 3+ weeks after Hurricane Helene left her impact on the area. A total of 30 people, this is the official number from the state, a total of 30 people remain unaccounted for in the western half of the state as the death toll for the storm has reached 95 in North Carolina. Fatalities have been reported across 21 counties. According to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, the vast majority of those fatalities being reported in Buncombe County, where there were 42 deaths, followed by Yancey, which had 11, and Henderson, that had 7 deaths. As we look at the continued recovery work this morning, well, power outages are still way down, which is great. Some 5,000 customers without power. The vast majority of those 5,000 located in Yancey County, where over 3,000 customers are without power, and some of those folks likely waiting months to get their power restored in that area as crews continue their recovery efforts. Former President Donald Trump was asked yesterday why he is visiting North Carolina. He'll be here later today. We'll have details on that coming up. He had this to say in response to the reporter's question.
Just to let the people know I'm with them. The government's been very bad to North Carolina. The White House has been very, very bad to North Carolina. The governor of Georgia is doing a very good job. I don't know how they've treated Georgia, but the governor is doing a very good job. But North Carolina has been treated really badly by the White House. So I'm just going to let them know I'm with them.
Just going to let them know I'm with them. We'll have details on the president's visit coming up. With that, a Disaster Recovery Center, or a DRC, will open in Mecklenburg County this morning to help those that were affected by Helene. The Disaster Recovery Centers are one-stop shops where residents can meet with FEMA representatives, apply for assistance, receive referrals to local assistance in the area, and apply with the U.S. Small Business Administration for low-interest disaster loans. The DRC in Mecklenburg County will be located in Northeast Charlotte at the Corvain Community School. That's located at 9501 David Taylor Drive, and will be open from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday. That facility does open this morning in parts of Northeast Charlotte in Mecklenburg County. With that, mentioning all of the increased interest in North Carolina for a variety of reasons, and former President Trump, as he noted, will be in North Carolina today. He is set to hold a rally in Greenville coming up this afternoon. He will then speak at a faith-based event in Concord tonight, and on Tuesday he will speak at the First Horizon Coliseum, which was formerly the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro. So 3 different stops for the president as he'll be in the state coming up a little bit later on today. With that, President Bill Clinton was in the state last week, and we are learning details this morning that Barack Obama, who will be in the state, he will be in Charlotte on Friday at a rally to encourage increased and early voting. Kamala Harris's husband in Doug Emhoff will also be in the RTP area in the middle half of the week. So as we head into the home stretch of the election cycle, a lot of interest here in North Carolina. We'll continue to track it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:09, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Early voting will continue again this morning, and we've got a record. As of 4 p.m. on Sunday, that was yesterday, the 4th day of early voting in North Carolina, more than 1 million voters had already cast ballots for the 2024 general election. That's according to preliminary data from the State Board of Elections. This was as of 4 p.m. Many polls open well past 4 p.m. on Sunday. In terms of the voter breakdown, in-person early voting consisted of about 916,000 of the 1 million votes, 77,000 absentee ballots, more than 11,000 overseas absentee ballots, and about 2,600 absentee military ballots, all combining to hit that 1 million voter threshold. The ballots cast as of 4 p.m. yesterday is about 13% of North Carolina's nearly 7.8 million registered voters, as early voting does continue to be very hot. And with that, the first day of early voting, which was last Thursday, we talked a lot about that, was a record-setting day. More than 353,000 voters casted their ballots in all 100 counties, more than 490 early voting locations across the state on that first day of early voting. Almost 5,000 more votes were cast compared to the first day of early voting in the 2020 general election, where the number was around 348,000 participating in that. In terms of party breakdown, among Democrats, registered voters is down about 28% and was down about that on the first day of early voting, while Republican participation was up about 22%. Unaffiliated voter participation was up about 9% on that first day of early voting. Jim Sterling, who is a research fellow at the John Locke Foundation, said he did not expect voter trends to increase compared to 2020, which was an atypical election year that was in the midst of the pandemic. He said this: "I think this increase is indicative of two major things. One, people are engaged in this year's election and know who they're voting for. And two, the efforts made to get Republicans to vote early has worked. Republican efforts to, quote, bank their vote have worked, which is likely to help them with the get out the vote efforts targeted at low propensity voters," according to Sterling. But an important question remains: who exactly are these early voters? If they're typical election day voters who just moved up their timetable and timeline, it could mean that election night will not be as good for Republicans as it traditionally is in the past. As of Friday, 428,300,000 votes had been cast in North Carolina, as we went over with those additional numbers coming in both Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That number has now cracked well over 1 million voters. And despite a large turnout and reports of lines at early voting locations across the State Board of Elections says there's no significant problems or issues. Karen Brinson Bell, the executive director of the North Carolina State Board of Elections, in reference to the first day of early voting, said, "Yesterday's turnout is a clear sign that voters are energized about this election, that they trust the election process, and that a hurricane will not stop North Carolinians from exercising their right to vote. Let's keep it rolling, North Carolina." So early voting does once again start in North Carolina this morning. Times do vary based on the county that you live in and the location that you are trying to vote at. You can find more details on that by visiting your local Board of Elections website, and there's a full list over on our website at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:13, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time for a look at your early Monday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. We have an
your emergency situation station.
521, welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Also streaming live this morning on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel. A federal judge has dismissed part of a lawsuit that was filed by the Republican National Committee and the North Carolina Republican Party challenging some 225,000 voter registrations in North Carolina. U.S. Chief District Court Judge Richard Myers ruled that the GOP groups had no right to sue under state law, which alleges that the State Board of Elections failed to maintain voter registration lists in compliance with the Federal Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, as you may have heard it described before. The judge emphasized that while concerns about election integrity were valid, the statute did not grant private groups, of which the RNC and NCGOP are, the right to bring such a lawsuit. The suit, which was filed in August, claimed that the Elections Board failed to require citizenship verification for voters, potentially allowing non-citizens to register. Myers rejected this claim but sent the GOP's second complaint regarding whether these actions violated the North Carolina Constitution back to the state courts. The claim raised a novel issue about state law, whether noncompliance with election regulations could lead to a constitutional inquiry. Myers stayed his ruling until Tuesday, that's tomorrow, to allow for possible appeals. The GOP groups are calling for the removal of the allegedly affected voters from the rolls or requiring them to cast provisional ballots in this ongoing election. The lawsuit has raised broader concerns over election integrity and voter disenfranchisement. We'll continue to track those details over on our website, and you can read more on that story at carolinajournal.com. The chair of the Moore County Democrat Party has resigned after being arrested for removing 2024 campaign signs supporting Republican presidential nominee and former President Donald Trump. In an October the 11th statement, the Moore County Sheriff's Office said that a deputy working in the West End area of town observed an individual by the name of Lowell Evan Simmons removing campaign signs from the road along Seven Lakes Drive. The quote from the Moore County Sheriff's Office reads as follows: "The deputy, who was responding to an unrelated call at the time, later followed up at Simmons's residence where the signs were found in his vehicle. Simmons admitted to removing the signs, which were then recovered and returned to their original owner. A warrant for Simmons' arrest was issued for 2 counts of misdemeanor larceny of a political sign. He was later released under a written promise to appear in a Moore County District Court coming up on October the 30th. Removal or theft of campaign signs does violate North Carolina law protecting the lawful placement of political signs during an election cycle. Violating this law is a Class 3 misdemeanor, punishable by up to 30 days in jail, a $500 fine, and up to a year's worth of probation." In this case, the individual in Lowell Simon was not only the chair of the Moore County Democrat Party, he is running for North Carolina State House in Moore County as well. We'll continue to track those details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. A rare copy of the United States Constitution that was found inside a filing cabinet in North Carolina sold late last week for millions of dollars at an auction in the state. One bidder forked over more than $9 million for the founding document, which sold in just 7 minutes. Most bids were placed over the phone, while 2 came in online, and 1 buyer was actually at the auction in person. The document was originally set to go on sale September the 28th, but was delayed due to Hurricane Helene. The copy of the Constitution was found in a metal filing cabinet at Hayes Farm, which is a 184-acre plantation site in Edenton, back in 2022. The property at the time was being cleared out after being sold to the state when the Constitution was discovered. It's now 5:25 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. In the middle part of last week, Governor Roy Cooper signed an executive order increasing unemployment payments for all North Carolinians in the wake of Hurricane Helene. All Council of State members concurred with the order. Weekly unemployment benefits will rise from a maximum of $350 a week to a maximum of $600 a week. Before the executive order, those collecting unemployment benefits would have received that $350 a week minimum. Cooper said in a press release, "As I've traveled for days around Western North Carolina, I've heard concerns from many small business owners about their employees who are unemployed because their businesses are temporarily closed. This executive order will increase unemployment benefits and help ease the financial burden for impacted North Carolinians as they work to recover from the storm. The order is tied to the state of emergency for Hurricane Helene and will remain in effect until that emergency order ends or is rescinded. Eligible claimants' benefits will be retroactive to September the 29th, so going back almost a month. And according to the state, they say it may take 2 or 3 weeks for those affected to see the impacts in their weekly benefit checks. Due to federal law, the order for elevated payments is statewide for all recipients, regardless of whether you were affected by the storm. State unemployment benefits, however, will still be capped at 12 weeks, but workers who lived or worked in the impacted North Carolina counties are out of work due to the disaster will qualify for up to 26 weeks of federal benefits to be paid through March the 29th of next year under the Federal Disaster Unemployment Assistance Program. The increased benefits would largely go to workers from counties impacted by Helene. Unemployment data through October the 13th shows that workers from those counties made up 79% of new claimants, about 20,000 in those areas of the state. That percentage likely increasing as more counties are added to the disaster declaration. North Carolina Treasurer and Council of State member Dale Folwell said, "I recommended that the governor, working with local, state, and federal officials and agencies, resolve to more clearly define and identify those areas that are impacted by this and for future disasters. This would assure that increasing benefits and employer tax reliefs are provided to those in the greatest need. Hopefully, the U.S. Congress and North Carolina General Assembly will take this opportunity to draft laws that will allow precision focus and immediate action to struggling disaster relief areas instead of extending the response on a statewide basis. The Division of Employment Security, which administers both the traditional state unemployment benefits and federal disaster unemployment assistance benefits, estimates that for every 10,000 North Carolinians who receive elevated state benefits, the additional cost to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund would be about $2.5 million per week. That is no small sum of money. They say that if 50,000 North Carolinians from impacted counties receive the full additional statewide benefits of all 12 weeks, the additional cost to the trust fund is estimated to be around $150 million. Those same 50,000 workers would then be eligible for an additional 14 weeks of federal benefits, totaling some $175 million to be paid by the federal government. We've got more details on this executive order and everything you need to know about eligibility over on our website, carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT, and time to get another look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. We're looking.
WBT.com for details. Cheers.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on this Monday morning. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. A disaster recovery center will open in Mecklenburg County today to help those that are affected and are currently displaced by Hurricane Helene. Disaster recovery centers are one-stop shops where residents can meet with FEMA representatives, apply for assistance, receive referrals to local assistance in the area, and apply with U.S. Small Business Administrations for low-interest disaster loans. The Disaster Recovery Center in Mecklenburg County will be located in Northeast Charlotte at the Corvane Community School. That's located at 9501 David Taylor Drive and will be open from 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday. There are already a dozen other of these disaster recovery centers that are open throughout the state. As you can imagine, most of them are in and around Western North Carolina, but as so many folks are still displaced from that area, they are now expanding that to the east to give individuals that might currently still be in Charlotte, in and around Mecklenburg County, dealing with the impacts of Helene, the opportunity to go and interface directly with the federal government. That opens again at 8 o'clock this morning. Keeping on that thread, a total of 30 people remain unaccounted for in North Carolina. That's according to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services following Hurricane Helene, as the death toll from that storm has reached, unfortunately, 95 in North Carolina. Fatalities have been reported across 21 counties, again, according to DHHS. The vast majority of those fatalities reported in Buncombe County, where 42 people lost their lives, followed by Yancey County at 11 and Henderson with 7 individuals dying there. Looking at the increase in individuals that are getting their power back online, the last week the number was hovering between 15 and 20,000. It's now down to 5,000. The vast majority of those without power are in Yancey County, in very remote areas of North Carolina, where they could be waiting upwards of 8+ months to get their power restored in some areas of the state. With that, crews continuing to deliver generators of propane and gasoline to those areas, so individuals do have access to some electrical service, while that electrical grid and hundreds of miles of power utility lines continue to be run in portions of western North Carolina. With that, a busy day across North Carolina today, as former President Donald Trump has a couple of events slated to take place. He was asked yesterday before getting onto a helicopter as to why he is visiting the Tar Heel State. This is what the former president had to say.
Just to let the people know I'm with them. The government's been very bad to North Carolina. The White House has been very, very bad to North Carolina. The governor of Georgia is doing a very good job. I don't know how they've treated Georgia, but the governor is doing a very good job. But North Carolina has been treated really badly by the White House. So I'm just going to let them know I'm with them.
The president wants to let the folks in North Carolina know that he is with them. And as we sit here this morning, a little more than 2 weeks ahead of Election Day, 15 days away, this is going to be a very busy political week here across the state of North Carolina. Trump will be in Greenville this afternoon for a rally that takes place late this afternoon. He will then be speaking at a faith-based event in Concord tonight, and on Tuesday he will speak at the First Horizon Coliseum, that's formerly known as the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro. With that, President Bill Clinton was in the state over the last couple of days. Clinton and the Vote Early bus tour was in Wilmington and Fayetteville on Friday. He was in Wilson and Greenville on Saturday and made his way to Raleigh yesterday afternoon in an attempt to inspire and to turn out Democrat voters across North Carolina. With that, the husband of Vice President and Kamala Harris, Doug Emhoff, will be in the RTP area on Tuesday. So much increased push on North Carolina as we take a look this morning at the Real Clear Politics polling average for the state. Former President Donald Trump does continue with about a half a point lead. This comes in, again, it's a polling average, taking a bunch of polls from across the state and combining those all together. This continues with our Carolina Journal poll that came out 2 weeks ago that showed a tie in that race. The polling, most polls in the state of North Carolina within the margin of error, just a couple of points here and there. And as we look at some of the other swing states, the president spending some time in Pennsylvania yesterday, multiple rallies over the weekend. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. All of those swing states, and again, if you are somebody that follows this polling very closely, all of those swing states of President Trump has a slight edge, a slight advantage. In some cases, like states like Wisconsin, it's no more than 0.2 of a percentage point. And in some other swing states like Georgia and Arizona, that lead is upwards of almost 2 full percentage points as we sit here just 15 days ahead of the election season. With that, early voting continues to go absolutely gangbusters in North Carolina. As of 4 p.m. yesterday, which was the 4th day of in-person early voting in the state, more than 1 million voters had cast ballots for the 2024 general election. That's according to preliminary data from the State Board of Elections. They put that press release out yesterday afternoon. And here's the breakdown on those numbers. In-person early voting made up over 916,000 of the 1 million votes that had been cast, followed by 77,800 absentee ballots from those registered here in the registered in North Carolina, but either living in the state or living out of the state. Overseas absentee ballots consisted of 11,000 votes, and for military absentee ballots, that number consisted of about 2,600 or so individuals here in North Carolina. The State Board of Elections reports that this statewide turnout, it's obviously at this point more than 1 million, represents a statewide turnout of about 13% of North Carolina's nearly 7.8 million registered voters. As this trend continues, there's a high likelihood that between 60 and 70% of all votes for the 2024 general election, I'll say that again, between 60 and 70% of all of the votes for the 2024 general election will likely be in before Election Day even rolls around. Early voting does continue across the state this morning. Over 400 early voting locations in 100 counties. Early voting does continue coming up until Saturday, November the 2nd. That's the final day of early voting here in North Carolina. It's now 5:44 on the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Let's get a look at your Monday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks, Nick. North Shore.
10 and 99.3.
WBT.
It's 5:50. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. Good Monday morning to you. We are also streaming live this morning over on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel. Following and tracking some statewide news this morning, Governor Roy Cooper has signed an emergency executive order to increase unemployment benefits for North Carolinians in response to Hurricane Helene. The order raises weekly payments from a maximum of $350 to $600 and applies retroactively to eligible claims going all the way back to September the 29th. The increase, which was supported by all Council of State members, aims to alleviate the financial strain on workers and businesses that have been closed due to the storms. Though statewide benefits remain capped at 12 weeks, workers in impacted counties, of which there are 25 of them under that federal disaster declaration, may receive up to 26 weeks of federal disaster unemployment assistance through March of 2025. Most of the new unemployment claims, 79% of them, it's about 20,000 or so claims, are from Helene-affected counties, and this number is likely expected to rise as more areas are declared in the disaster zone and more folks begin the pieces of picking up their lives and their livelihoods and applying for the benefits. The additional state benefits could cost $150 million if 50,000 workers claim that full amount, while the federal government could have to cover upwards of $175 million for those extended benefits. One thing to note that these unemployment eligibilities are for the entire state of North Carolina, regardless of whether you were affected by Hurricane Helene or not. Unemployment benefits are required to be doled out equally statewide. So for folks that did not lose their jobs as a result of Hurricane Helene, they will see some of those added benefits as well. State Treasurer Dale Folwell has urged future policies to target specific disaster areas in a more precise manner, and he called for new legislation to address relief distribution more effectively and, again, to make it more highlighted for specific areas of the state. A federal judge has dismissed part of a lawsuit filed by the Republican National Committee and the North Carolina Republican Party. That lawsuit challenges some 225,000 voter registrations in North Carolina. U.S. District Court Judge Richard Myers ruled that the GOP groups had no right to sue under a state law, which alleges that the State Board of Elections failed to maintain voter registration lists in compliance with the federal Help America Vote Act, or HAVA. The judge emphasized that while concerns about election integrity were in fact valid, the statute did not grant private groups like the NCGOP and RNC the right to bring such a lawsuit. The lawsuit, which was filed in August, claimed that the election board failed to require citizenship verification for voters, potentially allowing non-citizens to register to vote. Myers rejected this claim. However, he sent the GOP's second complaint regarding whether these actions violated the North Carolina state constitution back to a state court. This claim raises a novel issue of state law about whether non-compliance with election regulations could lead to a constitutional inquiry. Myers stayed his ruling until tomorrow to allow for a possible appeal. The GOP groups are calling for removal of allegedly affected voters from the rolls or requiring them to cast provisional ballots in the 2024 election. The lawsuit has raised broader concerns over election integrity and voter disenfranchisement. Again, the ruling has been stayed until Tuesday for appeal. We'll be tracking those details throughout the day and tomorrow over on our website, carolinajournal.com. A total of 30 people remain unaccounted for in North Carolina following Hurricane Helene, as the death total from that storm has now reached, unfortunately, 95, with fatalities being reported in 21 counties. The vast majority of those in Buncombe County, where 42 people lost their lives as a result of that storm. 11 in Yancey County, 7 in Henderson, as those, again, 30 people still do remain unaccounted for as a result of Helene and those crews that are out in that area. Both state, federal, and private groups continue the efforts this morning to find these remaining bodies and get those individuals accounted for and provide some relief to those families. The chair of the Moore County Democrat Party has resigned after being arrested for removing a 2024 campaign signs supporting Republican presidential nominee and former President Donald Trump. In an October the 11th statement, the Moore County Sheriff's Office said that a deputy that was responding to an unrelated call at the time observed a man that was then identified as Lowell Evan Simon for removing campaign signs on a roadside along Seven Lakes Drive in Moore County. The deputy, again responding to an unrelated call, followed up at the individual's residence where the signs were found still sitting in his vehicle. The sheriff's office said that Simon admitted to removing the signs, which were then recovered and returned to their original owner. A warrant for his arrest was issued for 2 counts of misdemeanor larceny of a political sign. He was later released under a written promise to appear in a Moore County District Court coming up on October the 30th. Removal or theft of campaign signs anywhere in North Carolina, this is not just Moore County, removal or theft of any campaign signs violates North Carolina state law protecting the lawful placement of political signs during an election cycle. Violating this law is a Class 3 misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to 30 days in jail, $500 in fines, and up to a year of probation. Also important to note, Simon in this case was also a Democrat candidate for, and still is a Democrat candidate for North Carolina House. However, he still is running in that position, even though he has resigned from the Moore County Democrat Party. Well, that's going to do it for a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. What does early voting look like in Western North Carolina? We'll catch up with Andy Jackson from the John Locke Foundation on that, plus all the news of the day headed your way tomorrow morning right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back tomorrow morning at 5 right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.